President Lee Jae-myung has once again underlined the growing importance of diplomacy and that national unity in politics is crucial. The National Assembly's first plenary session of the year came to a halt due to a filibuster, with lawmakers failing to narrow their differences on a second special prosecutor bill. The Bank of Korea decided to leave its key interest rate as it is at 2.5% amid a weakened Korean won and rising inflation. A day after returning from Japan, President Lee stressed the need to bridge divides and work together to safeguard South Korea's national interests. His remarks come a day ahead of a lunch meeting with leaders from across the political spectrum. Our Blue House correspondent Song Yujin starts us off.
Having wrapped up back-to-back summits in China and Japan, President Lee Jae-myung stressed the growing importance of diplomacy during a weekly meeting with his top aides on Thursday.
국제 질서의 불확실성이 증폭될수록 영내의 평화와 안정이 기묘합니다. 그렇기 때문에 상호 존중과 이해를 바탕으로 갈등 속에서도 균형점을 찾고 호혜적인 접점을 늘려가는 지혜로운 실용 외교가 어느 때보다 중요합니다.
President Lee cited rising instability in Latin America and the Middle East, apparently pointing to the political turmoil in Venezuela following recent U.S. military strikes and the capture of President Nicolas Maduro, as well as growing anti-government protests in Iran. He went on to stress that national unity, particularly in politics, is essential.
만일 우리 내부가 분열하고 반목한다면 외풍에 맞서 국익을 지킬 수가 없고 애써 거둔 외교 성과조차도 물거품이 될 것이 분명합니다.
Lee's remarks come as tensions continue to escalate between the ruling Democratic Party and the main opposition, People Power Party. On Thursday, the National Assembly opened a plenary session and placed a bill proposed by the DP to appoint a second special counsel to launch follow-up probes into former President Yoon Suk-yeol, former First Lady Kim Gun-hee, and the death of a Marine during flood rescue operations in 2023. In response, the opposition bloc, including the PPP and the Reform Party, launched a filibuster. PPP leader Chang Dong-hyuk began a hunger strike on Thursday afternoon. The opposition is calling for a special counsel investigation into allegations of illegal lobbying by the Unification Church involving senior DP politicians, as well as claims of bribery cover-ups linked to candidate nominations during past local and general elections. Now, more spotlight will turn to President Lee's lunch meeting on Friday, where he has invited the leadership of 7 parliamentary parties, including the ruling Democratic Party and the main opposition, People Power Party. The PPP has previously indicated it will not attend. Song Yujin, Arirang News.
In related news, a filibuster has brought the National Assembly's first plenary session of the year to a halt, as lawmakers clash over a second special prosecutor bill. Our Moon Hae-ryun follows this report from the National Assembly.
The National Assembly plunged into a standoff during its first plenary session of the year, after the ruling Democratic Party pushed ahead with a second comprehensive special prosecutor bill, triggering a filibuster by the main opposition People Power Party. The standoff followed the collapse of last-minute talks ahead of Thursday afternoon session, as the parties failed to narrow their differences over how to handle the Unification Church probe. Earlier floor leaders met under Speaker Woo Won-sik, but talks broke down as the Democratic Party pushed to advance the second special prosecutor bill. The People Power Party countered that unresolved disputes over the Unification Church probe must be addressed first. As the bill was put to the floor during the afternoon session, the People Power Party immediately launched a filibuster, calling the legislation politically motivated and accusing the ruling bloc of reviving past investigations for electoral gain. Opposition leaders argued the bill targets what they described as dead power, while ignoring allegations involving figures tied to the ruling camp.
What the public does not want is a far-fetched special prosecutor scheme to shield ruling party scandals and target the opposition for local elections.
The Democratic Party rejected those claims, accusing the opposition of blocking efforts to fully uncover alleged insurrection and abuse of power. DP floor leader Han Byung-do said the filibuster amounts to shielding wrongdoing, while leaving more than 180 long-stalled livelihood bills effectively asleep on the assembly floor.
The Democratic Party will end the filibuster with a termination vote tomorrow, pass the second special prosecutor bill, and turn the Assembly's focus back to livelihoods.
Under National Assembly rules, a filibuster can only be terminated after 24 hours have elapsed and at least 3/5 of lawmakers vote in favor. With the ruling bloc taking up the majority, the bill is expected to pass by Friday afternoon. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung met with an influential UAE official at the Blue House today for talks on follow-up measures to cooperation in the defense industry. He hosted Abu Dhabi's Executive Affairs Authority Chairman Khaldoon Khalifa Al Mubarak and discussed ways to materialize bilateral cooperation in the defense industry, AI, and energy. He said that he wished the relations would last 100 years. He earlier expressed hopes that Korea could cooperate with the UAE's plans for its centennial in 2071. The president went to Abu Dhabi in November on a state visit and held a summit with President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, whom he invited to visit Korea. The government will improve business regulations to tackle challenges faced by small and medium-sized businesses. Intentions to this end were shared during a policy coordination meeting at the government complex here in Seoul earlier on this Thursday, during which officials vowed to place priority on improving a total of 79 regulatory tasks. Prime Minister Kim Min-seok said the move seeks to align regulations with the reality on the ground. He also said the government will reform 67 government certification systems to ease the burden on businesses. South Korea's central bank held its first monetary policy meeting of the year to hold the benchmark interest rate steady at 2.5%, marking a fifth consecutive hold. Our Kim Jun-hong has the details.
The Bank of Korea has kept its benchmark interest rate unchanged at an annual 2.5% amid the weakening Korean won. The unanimous decision was announced on Thursday following the central bank's first monetary policy meeting of the year.
The board judged it appropriate to maintain the current base rate while monitoring policy conditions. As inflation is expected to stabilize, growth is improving, and risks to financial stability persist. This decision was unanimous.
This marks the fifth consecutive session the board has stood pat on the rate, having paused its easing cycle in the second half of last year. The central bank noted that this year's economic growth is likely to broadly match the 1.8% forecast revised upward last November, citing a recovery in the semiconductor sector and improving growth in major economies. It added that this solid growth momentum has reduced the immediate need for a rate cut. However, uncertainties remain, particularly regarding the foreign exchange market. The rising $1 exchange rate and continued gains in housing prices in the Seoul metropolitan area were cited as key factors behind the decision. Governor Lee was direct when asked if the currency volatility was the primary driver.
To the question of whether the exchange rate was the biggest factor, the answer is yes. I don't believe the stabilization policies at the end of the year were ineffective, but rather it was an occasion to confirm where our weaknesses lie.
The governor added that monetary policy decisions going forward will be made with close attention to inflation trends and risks to financial stability at home and abroad. In a shift from the Bank of Korea's previous monetary statements, its statement for Thursday's rate decision made no mention of a potential rate cut in the future. This is being seen as a sign of a possible shift in the direction of future interest rates. Kim Jun-hong, Arirang News.
Trade Minister Yo Han-gu delayed his flight back after U.S. President Donald Trump signed a proclamation imposing tariffs on goods imported into and re-exported from the U.S. Park Jun-han explains.
South Korea's Trade Minister Yo Han-gu decided to extend his stay in Washington amid concerns over U.S. tariffs on semiconductors. Minister Yo, who was visiting the U.S., announced on Wednesday local time that he would delay his return to Seoul by a day to assess the implications of U.S. President Donald Trump's latest proclamation on tariffs and trade issues. Speaking to reporters, Yo emphasized the need to closely monitor the developments, stating he was carefully watching the matter, but adding that it was difficult to comment on at this time. He added that his team is analyzing potential impacts on Korean companies. On Wednesday, Trump signed a proclamation imposing a 25% tariff on certain advanced chips, including NVIDIA and AMD's products manufactured by TSMC in Taiwan and imported into the U.S. for re-export. The U.S. administration framed the action under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, citing national security risks from semiconductor imports that do not contribute to domestic supply chains or manufacturing capabilities. The proclamation effectively targets re-exports to China, allowing the U.S. to collect 25% of the sales value as a fee. However, the information reported that Beijing has advised domestic firms to purchase NVIDIA's H200 only under special circumstances, aiming to reduce China's reliance on foreign technology and strengthen its own industry. For South Korea, a major semiconductor exporter, Trump's proclamation raises concerns about wider tariff expansions. The White House fact sheet indicated that Trump may impose broader tariffs on imports of semiconductors and their derivative products, as well as an accompanying tariff offset program to incentivize domestic manufacture, as previously announced. The United States' actions could directly impact Korea's core industry, as any tariffs on re-exported chips could disrupt supply chains and increase costs for Korean tech giants Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix. 박준환, 아리랑 뉴스.
U.S. President Donald Trump has said that it is Ukrainian President Zelenskyy who's the main impediment to resolving the four-year-old war, not Russian President Vladimir Putin. Cha Yong-kyung has this report.
U.S. President Donald Trump said Ukraine, not Russia, is delaying a possible peace agreement. In an exclusive interview with Reuters in the Oval Office on Wednesday, Trump stated that Russian President Vladimir Putin is prepared to end the war, while President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has been more hesitant. Trump has often criticized both Putin and Zelenskyy, but Reuters noted that this time he appeared especially downbeat about the Ukrainian leader. The rhetoric sharply contrasts with that of European allies, who have consistently maintained that Moscow has little interest in bringing its war in Ukraine to an end, further highlighting Trump's apparent dissatisfaction with Zelenskyy. Trump also mentioned the violent crackdown on anti-government protesters in Iran, saying Iranian opposition figure Reza Pahlavi seems very nice, but questioned whether he could rally enough support internally to eventually assume power. Pahlavi has been based in the U.S. since before his father, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the former Shah of Iran, was toppled in the 1979 Islamic Revolution, but has become a prominent voice in the protests. Trump's remarks went further in casting doubt on Pahlavi's leadership prospects, following his statement last week that he had no plans to meet with him. Trump added that he has no plans to fire Jerome Powell despite a Justice Department criminal investigation into the Federal Reserve chair, but it was too early to say what he would ultimately do. Trump also said that a president should have something to say about Fed policy, and as he's made a lot of money with business, he has a better understanding than, quote, too late Jerome Powell. Trump repeatedly attacked Powell and the Federal Reserve for failing to cut interest rates last year, labeling him a numbskull, a dumb guy, and an obvious Trump hater. Powell's term expires in May. Cha Yong-kyung, 아리랑 뉴스.
The lights have dimmed in Las Vegas, marking the end of CES 2026. Our Kim Do-yeon has returned from Las Vegas and joins us in the studio to wrap up the week's biggest trends. Welcome back, Do-yeon.
Thank you. It was a hectic week, but very productive.
I'm sure. Well, Do-yeon, every year there's one buzzword or theme that dominates the show floor. Now, what was the hottest topic of CES 2026?
Well, before we get there, I wanted to sort of show you the numbers. From the latest numbers, although subject to audit, 148,000 people attended this year's event, with 55,000 of them from overseas like me. So it was a massive show, and this year there was a clear trend. If last year was about the software of AI, this year was undeniably about the hardware, specifically robotics. We saw a major shift from digital AI to physical AI. The hottest topic was the humanoid. companies are no longer just showing prototypes behind glass. They're showing robots that can walk, work, and interact with us safely. Now, I spoke with Brian Kaminsky from the Consumer Tech Association, the organizers of CES, and he noted that this year was a turning point for how robots fit into our lives. And it turns out South Korean players also didn't go unnoticed.
I think that what really stood out to me this year was the leap in robotics. Humanoids had quite a big year with Hyundai showcasing their Atlas humanoid robot. We saw the K-Humanoid Alliance from Korea bring together a variety of different startups to really showcase how robotics are getting to this point where they're able to complement human labor and activity, because it's about coexisting with humanity and rather than displacing.
Right, and as he mentioned, the key word is coexisting. The industry focus has moved from robots replacing humans to robots working alongside us as partners.
Coexisting with humanity, that's a very significant distinction. Now, beyond the heavy machinery and robots, Toyon, what else stood out? Because I heard there were some interesting developments in the lifestyle technology, right?
Right, and the second biggest trend for me at least was the beauty tech. Now, last year, CES actually introduced a dedicated beauty tech category for the first time, signaling that this is no longer niche, it's mainstream. It falls under the broader theme of longevity, using tech to live longer and better. We saw incredible innovations from Korean companies. Of course, K-Tech is a strength for the nation. For instance, Korea Korea showcased a device that uses AI to analyze skin and treat scars instantly.
Or one of my favorites was Korea did an AI-powered precision scar treatment and coverage system device. So working to the idea that some people, when they want to get that feeling of better, maybe they don't want to have the stories associated with a scar that they have. Well, how about being able to cover it up with a tech device that can precisely treat it? And that's something that Korea was doing that I found to be really quite compelling.
You know, that leads us to our final point. You mentioned Hyundai and Kolmar. It sounds like Korean companies had a massive presence there. Now, how did they perform overall compared to the global competition?
Now, they swept the innovation awards. So around 50% of all innovation honorees this year were Korean firms. Whether it was the big conglomerates like Samsung and LG or the startups in Eureka Park, Korean companies were dominant. It wasn't just about attendance numbers, it was about the quality of the technology. When I asked the CTA about the perception of Korean companies, this year they emphasized that Korea is now seen as a hotbed for cutting-edge tech.
Korean innovation showed up, and that was clear in the presence of Hyundai, LG, Samsung, but as I said, Korea, Persona AI, Saragem, other companies of all sizes really showcase that Korean innovation is on the cutting edge and is pushing forward the entire technology sector.
Right, so to sum it up, from heavy industry to beauty, Korean companies are not just following trends, they're actually setting them now. And for consumers, the good news is that many of these products, including the beauty devices and smart home appliances, are scheduled to hit the global market within the first half of this year. It really felt like the gap between science fiction and consumer reality has finally closed, with technology that feels immediate rather than futuristic. Now, walking the floor, the energy wasn't about what might happen in 10 years, but what will be in our living rooms in 10 months.
Toyon, thank you for the wrap-up today. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
At a time when K-beauty is garnering ever more attention, the country is also looking to boost the industry through further legislative support. Our An Sung-jin talked to both the private and public sector stakeholders on this issue.
Once a mid-sized player, this K-beauty company now boasts a market value that rivals industry heavyweights. It's been about 10 years since this company took off, relatively young by industry standards. Yet today, its influence extends far beyond the domestic market, reaching consumers around the world.
These products are built on strong technological capabilities, and these R&D-driven technologies resonate with consumers. The already high share of overseas sales through its unique products gives the company a competitive edge too.
Profits from overseas markets now account for nearly 80% of total revenue, further pushing the company to expand its global reach. Firms like this are rapidly adapting their distribution networks while closely tracking consumer preferences and beauty trends in individual overseas markets, surpassing the strategies of traditional conglomerates.
You guys have so many brands, right? So it's a high competition, so it must be good, otherwise you can't survive in these industries. So I just really want to try because it's like very popular.
Because it's really very popular. I don't know, it makes my skin really look better. I mean, I'm trying like healthier maybe.
Cosmetics are South Korea's top export category among small and medium-sized enterprises, and the country currently ranks as the world's third largest cosmetics exporter. Powered by cutting-edge technology and price competitiveness, South Korea's cosmetics industry is expanding globally. In 2025, cosmetics exports topped $100 billion, setting a new record high. The Lee Jae-myung administration has also acknowledged the need to further foster and support the cosmetics industry as part of its national policy agenda. While most existing laws focus on regulatory oversight, this lawmaker proposed legislation to expand investment in R&D and exports across the Korean cosmetics sector.
K-beauty is already globally recognized, but the industry itself is largely made up of small and medium-sized companies. The bill is designed to support the entire cosmetics value chain, from research and development to manufacturing, production, distribution, and sales, covering every stage of the industry.
Through broader government initiatives like this legislation, officials expect stronger global competitiveness, increased exports, and a more innovative future for South Korea's cosmetics industry. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Today feels a bit less cold, but we do need to watch out for fine dust and yellow dust blowing in from overseas. Starting this afternoon, yellow dust has arrived around the country. By late tonight, ultrafine dust is expected to reach very bad levels in some areas. Meanwhile, milder weather will continue through the weekend, staying warmer than usual for this time of year. Temperatures in most regions climbed back above freezing this morning. Seoul started the day at 1.9 degrees Celsius, then rose to 8 degrees, about 6 degrees above the season average. Seoul and Daegu will start off at -1 degree tomorrow morning, Gyeongju at -2 degrees. Highs will rise to 5 degrees in Seoul, 15 degrees in Gyeongju and Busan. In the eastern areas, dry weather advisories remain in effect and strong wind warnings have been issued along the East Coast. Please be careful. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.